Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes while we just let everyone dial in, and then we'll get ourselves started. Thanks for the folk who've just recently joined. We're just going to wait one more minute and before we get ourselves started, let everyone roll in from their last meeting. Hope everyone's well. Hi.
Nasser from Runway.
Hey, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thirty more seconds, then we'll get started. Okay, let's get going. So welcome everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us on this Thursday morning, afternoon, depending on your current location. I'm Mark Bennett. I'm SVP Business Development for ACORD and ACORD Solutions Group. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Today, you're joining the ACORD Solutions Group's Horizon event series. We're joined by our member and partner Digitide and a wonderful panel that we'll introduce shortly. Today's theme and topic is going to be talking about documents going digital and how technology is automating the submission intake process. So we're going to be talking about that as an industry change as part of the panel discussion today, and then the Digitide team and their investments in ACORD Solutions Group technology in their own are going to be talking about and demonstrating today how that submission intake process can be automated and some of the benefit cases that can be seen from it. So today's session, as all ACORD Solutions Group Horizon webinars, is one of very much interactive. This is not a hard sell approach in how we engage with you guys. So please make this as interactive as you possibly can. There's lots of opportunities to ask questions throughout. You'll all be incredibly familiar with Microsoft Teams as a technology. Q&A button at the very top if you're utilizing a desktop app, or I think it's on the menu for a mobile. Please do ask some questions on the Q&A. You also can unmute yourself to ask Q&A as well if you'd like to ask a direct question. There's also a chat function as well if you wish to engage in asking questions on that, or engaging with others on the other attendees in any kind of chat-based discussions. For completeness, today's webinar is being recorded as well, so if any of your colleagues were unable to attend today, the recording and the presentation materials will be circulated after the event to ensure that you can distribute it accordingly. So with that said, again, welcome everyone. Javon, would you be so kind to step us forward? Thank you very much. Right, so we're going to kick off firstly with a circa 15-20 minute panel-based discussion. Again, I've introduced myself, so I won't bother doing that again, but I'm going to pass over to Joanne and then onwards. Joanne.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone. I'm Joanne Artisani, founder and CEO of Sprouter. Sprouter is a insurance program and product design and build firm. We specialize in creating underwriting guidelines, workflows for underwriting and submissions, as well as authoring the forms, rates, and rules that are required to support insurance products as they get into market for startups, existing program managers, and MGAs, as well as carriers.
Thank you very much. Paul.
Hello, Paul Nelson, Managing Director Partner at Boston Consulting Group, and I lead the property and casualty segment for BCG in North America. Have been in the property and casualty industry really for my entire career. I've stopped counting at 35 years, so I'll say 35 years plus. I started as an underwriter at FM Global, then I was a commercial lines broker, and then after a bit tour at graduate school for the past 26 years or so, have been advising clients, distributors, as well as insurance carriers and other service organizations across the full value chain. It's a pleasure to be with you. Look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Paul. Moshe.
Hi, I'll be Paul by 5 years. I'll say 40. Paul said 35. I've been in the IT/insurance industry for over 40 years of my career, where I have managed, designed many different insurance systems. Because of all my exposure dealing with submissions, policies, claims, reinsurance, I've actually developed to become the SME for Digitide in developing new systems and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Moshe. And last but very much not least, Jiwon. You might be on mute, sir.
So good morning, everyone. Thanks for being on this call. My name is Jeevan Donthul. I am heading the global delivery for Digitide Tech and Digital Services. I have about 30 years of experience in the IT industry, and I've worked with global top insurers, both in Americas as well as in the Europe. And my insurance exposure is for the last 25 years. I currently take care of the overall IT and digital delivery for the Digitide organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. What a power panel we've got coming up. So what we're going to do, we're going to stop sharing screen. So don't worry, your team hasn't just failed on you. And then we're going to run through some questions to the panel. I'm moderating it, so good luck, panelists. And but any of the audience who do wish to enrich, please, as I said, there's a Q&A function or a chat function. I'll be monitoring those for any questions that we can feed in. So Paul, you pulled the short straw earlier on when we were planning these questions. So you're up first. So from your perspective, from BCG, what challenges do you see commercial P&C insurers face when it comes to submission intake?
So as I'm sort of inclined to do, I often think sort of broadly and with a longer term to set the sort of context for this. Look, we all know, we've been in this industry a long time, that the property and casualty industry has been going through a slow rolling transformation of the industry, really centered around data and analytics. And so you could say that maybe that was started by Progressive in the 90s with non-standard auto. That was certainly an inflection point. But that notion of finding information, turning it into data, and then using it to create analytics and drive that through the value chain to improve decision making, that has been going on for a long time. And when you start to think about commercial and specialty insurance companies and the application intake, you can see from the bridge, if you thought you took the perspective of the CEO or the C-suite, they say, this is obvious, this is great, we should be getting all this information and turning it into data and using that data across the value chain, not just for this submission or this renewal, but longitudinally. And so that makes a ton of sense, right? The challenge ends up being, of course, when you go out into the different underwriting units, the different parts of the organization, incentives start to take over. And that getting a common way to intake applications, a common set of definitions, which is in a global property and casualty firm is, by the way, quite a challenge, but getting common definitions and getting a common way to sort of store that information and use it, that's where things get challenging. The leadership behaviors, across the piece are not the least of the challenges, but the opportunity is great. So I think the notion is, how do you create a strategic perspective around how we should be using this information, and then pull it through with a consistent approach, and that's I think the challenge.
Hey, Paul, I love that you brought in the you're talking about the stakeholders and kind of the impact there. And I feel what I've observed myself is the folks most impacted by this are often the closest to the business and to the customer. And so if we're not bringing in those voices at the table as we're discussing not just what to optimize and how to think about that data, but how it actually works in real life at the desk, at the decision point, we're missing opportunities in that conversion. And the impact of the digital transformation. So I love that you touched on that.
I'd like to bring something that just took place as late as yesterday. I'll go a little into detail, but we were watching a company looking at submissions that were mailed in, and we saw BPO individuals making decisions by reading documents to say, oh, should we send this submission further into the system or reject it? And I found that to be very, very funny, because usually if we had standard information of what's needed, the data that's required, you don't need people who really don't have insurance backgrounds to make decisions to allow for submissions to go into the PAS system or not. And what was funny here was, so they were looking for keywords, and if they found the keyword, they automatically denied the submission. I'm sure that if it was automated, okay, and there were AI or ML rules around it and so on, what to be accepted, I'm sure more submissions would have gone to the underwriting department to make decisions. So again, data is critical. The right data is very, very important, and to make sure that the right people are seeing it. Automating that process definitely makes it a lot easier. Mark, back to you.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
Mark, please. Yeah.
It feels like the perfect segue in terms of what are the benefits of doing this.
I agree.
And I can't help but think about that behavior exactly, Moshe. It's when you are able to remove low yield actions to produce high yield outcomes, that's what we're talking about here. And so when we can enforce consistency in data, that's a win. But the unspoken result of this is you can remove bias in underwriting. And so you can point a layer of analytics to the intake process and remove human decision making on what submission gets worked on at all or next. And if you think about from a business perspective, if you're able to lay on top of your strategy what your business objectives are and calibrate the submissions coming in to optimize that, the impact not just to the humans on the desk that are making decisions is huge, because they're focusing their attention on the right risks at the right time. But the outcome is you actually can move the direction of your portfolio based on those decisions. You can focus on the high probability of conversions or diversification in your portfolio if you're looking to bring and introduce more types of risks into your portfolio to help balance the profitability, or promote the highest margin exposures first. And this may sound provocative, but what I would say is if you're not doing this, and you have an underwriting force of, say, 10 underwriters receiving and making decisions on risks that are coming into them, you have 10 separate quoting strategies happening right now.
And biased quoting strategies, right? Based on, don't get me wrong, intuition and gut feel is incredibly powerful, but that coupled with proper analytics driven by, as you say, guided by an overall strategy from a firm, that's fundamentally what the insurtech industry was meant to be propagating and standing by. Yeah, really fascinating, Joanne. Paul, Javon, or Moshe, anything to add on that point?
I think that was a good coverage. I do think that, look, with back to this long term, I think it's not a question of if this is going to get automated and turned into real analytical information. It's a question of when and how hard it will it be. How hard will underwriting organizations make it on themselves to get there? So it's an inevitability in my view.
I think that's fair. That's absolutely fair. So I think I'm going to pivot the questions now to Javon from a Digitide perspective. So as a solution provider for the insurance industry, you obviously see both sides of it. You see the IT perspective and the change that brings to not only IT but also operations. But also you get to see the business perspective. What's the value to the underwriter? What's the value to the teams that are valuing from that digital submission process? So from your perspective, what kind of trends are you seeing from Digitide and your customer engagements when it comes to kind of the submission intake process?
Right. So multiple things actually, right? So over the course of last few decades, we have seen the changes happening on the business side and on the technology side as well. But of recent, actually, the AI is catching up, more so Gen AI to start with. Like, what we are seeing with our insurers is that, they're experimenting with solutions, point solutions. For example, one of the insurers that we're working with, they wanted to just automate the loss run part of it, actually. Right? So just the loss run through RPA processing as well as the automated way of extracting, actually. So that part is what they have tried. We have seen another insurer where what they have looked at is the end-to-end process, but for a very niche segment of line of business, actually, like general liability coverage and specific class codes, which are simple, straightforward, actually, that they can underwrite it easily. So they have done the end-to-end automation, starting with email extractions, then the email ingestions, the automated extractions, and then risk triage, then automated underwriting, rating, and then sending the code back to the insurer, right? But then they tried this with very niche segment. So net, the point is that with the technology evolving, people are trying out different solutions in kind of point solutions. But I think we are getting to a stage where we can integrate multiple things and kind of put together an end-to-end solution, automated solution for the industry.
Very good. And Moshe, what's your view from your 40 years?
Yeah, let me get to that a little bit. First of all, we will have a slide a little later on that gives you the benefits both from the insured as well as the carrier, and some of this is actually being spoken about right now, and what's taking place. Obviously, by going to automation and so on, there's quite a few advantages for both the customer as well as the insurance company and so on. When it comes to submissions, people have to say what data is really needed for the carrier to make their decisions. Okay. And obviously, the actual customer itself has to gather that data, being through the broker, and get the information. By doing, in the old way, when people used to have calling in and giving the information over the phone and so on, and you had your underwriter assistants, taking in the information, errors were made. The underwriter didn't know what the underwriter assistant really recorded. Calls went back and forth and so on. When you start seeing the automation, the beauty is when the forms come in or whatever data your standard forms you've created, if the data is missing and you need clarity, it's an email automatically based off of your rules. So by definition, the speed that takes place between the information coming in, what's required for the quoting, the advantage is tremendous. Of course, it's less errors, but when things are needed, the communication works so much quicker and so on. You're not requiring manual intervention for all of this. And by the way, once the data comes in, the quoting could take place automatically. So we over the 40 years, I've seen the changes when the phone calls used to come in, and I remember the girls and guys used to be at the desk, writing information, then going into the system, and then the underwriter saying, I don't have enough information. By going through to automation, that's all gone. It's a new world.
Very good. Great perspective.
Yeah,
so
if I can...
I think that... Oh, please. Sorry, was that...
Yeah, just a quick point up, right? Directionally, insurers in general are adopting technology and going step by step, right? Be it analytics, be it Gen AI to start with, or predictive AI, or RPA, or automated ingestion. So people are experimenting different solutions for different points in the whole process. So directionally, we're getting there. However, there are inhibitions in terms of whether AI will replace underwriters. That is not the case. Actually, it's more of a complementary stuff. It is an augmenting thing that enables underwriter to assess the risk effectively, accurately. But the human experience is very much needed. There are two parts, science and art part of it. The science part is getting automated. The art part remains with the underwriter expertise, right? So net, if you see overall risk assessment, humanizing the complex and automating the mundane. That is the philosophy with which the industry is advancing forward.
Very good.
I want to add one point. Now, everyone's talking about the technology from the quoting perspective. Clients want companies to be using latest technology. If a guy's going in to do a quote, he's doing something the old way. He says, they're outdated. Are they efficient in doing what their work is? So as being the client, I want to see the company that I'm dealing with is dealing with new technology and moving along and not staying in the 1900s. So we keep on talking about the insurance company. We also have to deal with that the client is expecting more in this day and age, be it from the automation, getting information back and forth, and so on. So that becomes a very critical piece for actually deciding to go to an insurance company and write the policy with them. So it's really on both sides of the of the game, so to speak. Both are required for a technology perspective.
I think that kind of leads me quite nicely to our kind of concluding question for this sort of 20-minute panel, which was clearly the submission intake process is evolving with, the need is evolving with technology and time. We've brushed on it, but we've also, I think it has a massive impact. And again, you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the UK. I operate very closely around the London specialty and reinsurance market, where if you spoke to a specialty underwriter, they'll tell you that actually I don't want to ingest anything submissions digitally. I'm proud. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've done 40 years underwriting hull. I know this stuff backwards. There's no, I actually like to triage this myself. So speculating, crystal balling, 2040, what does that submission intake process look like? And Paul, I'm going to give you a short straw again, chap, to kick us off, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, what I see going on across the marketplace is really remarkable levels of investment in transformation. You could call it digital automation or digital transformation. It's digital transformation now with more and more powerful tools. And of course, I'll cite the always front of mind Gen AI as a key driver of that change. So you see that going on right now. And what that is doing is, across my client set, is the stakes are getting raised for that transformation. So if you then sort of said fast forward for 15 years, I think, Mark, that was the question, 2040,
yes.
We can get to a place where we're not so much of this is more proactive. We're not in the give me 3 years of loss history, send me an application, give me 90 days to quote. It will be a much more fluid, much more sort of less time-bound dynamic environment, where we might even be in multiple year contracts might be the standard, and we've just got a perpetual set of information flowing back and forth between the client, the broker, and the underwriting organization. That's how I see the marketplace evolving. The hardest thing to understand is how soon we'll get there. And the insurance industry, just one other, is the second fastest adopting industry of generative AI solutions across all industries. Okay. And so these kinds of solutions are so important to being able to ingest that data and feed those.
Who's number one, Paul?
Well, it's actually a little bit of a cheat. The technology, media, telecom industry is number one.
Okay.
And the cheat on that is that the technology, media, telecom, the product is Gen AI in a lot of cases. So they're the fastest adopting. But if you pull them aside and say who outside of those that are selling Gen AI as a actual product or an offering, insurance is the fastest adopting generative AI industry across all industries, and we've researched that for a couple of years. That's pretty stable at this point. So if you think about that and you think about where we're going to be in 10 years, it's going to be an interesting ride.
Very good. Joanne, anything to add on Paul's view?
Yes. I think I would just add that from experience as an underwriter, starting as a desk underwriter and liking to know it's the art of it. It's art being applied to science, and underwriters still really like to know what the root, like what is all the information that is being served to me. Don't distill it for me. I want to know what's behind the curtain myself and get to the conclusion. And so I think there's this I think the balance of where we need to continue to go to bring the user along in adoption is thinking about what that user interface and that workbench looks like in terms of being able to synthesize the data for them, so it allows them to be served in a different way, to not do it for them, but serve it up in a different way that is more impactful and more efficient. So I'm actually very excited about seeing how we're able to use the technology to complement the underwriting mindset.
Very good.
Let me add a little bit to that. The biggest growing market that I think that we see right now in insurance, the specialty insurance companies opening up all over the place. Obviously, because of special needs and the world is changing, and it's no longer the plain P&C. Everything is into specialty insurance companies opening up, offering their specialty products and so on. From the intake perspective, the insurance companies have to really learn how to adjust to be able to move and being able to acquire what's really required for their underwriting and so on. If the customers are coming up with ideas of what they need, and the insurance companies have to start adjusting and coming up what's required. So, it's back and forth. What's changing in the world? Like, for example, cyber insurance. Whoever would have thought about that 25, 30 years ago? And then how do you actually start, underwriting that? What risk do you have to take? What information do you need? So insurance companies are trying to get under that quicker to be able to know what they need with all the specialties coming along. And what I'm seeing also is that they're no longer waiting for the customer to come up with what they need. I think they're developing their own products and ideas because, again, they've seen the changing world. I grew up in AIG, it was very straight, everything was straight, this is what it is, and so on. It was only those that came up with the idea of where the world is going is where they started making a much bigger profit from the insurance company perspective. But being able to actually go out and collect the correct data and move that real quickly was a big improvement in getting new business. So everyone's got, both sides. A customer wants the insurance company, and that I think is a big movement now, especially for specialty insurance.
Very good. And Javon, just to wrap us up on that point, sir, you've been very patient. What's your closing remarks on that point?
Well, quick point actually. With the rate at which the technology is evolving, I think about 15 years from now, I think there is no harm in dreaming big, and therefore the broader underwriting process will be a completely transformed one with the kind of autonomous underwriting where like the autonomous vehicle, the underwriter would have the screen in front of him, but he would not have to type using a keyboard, so it will be hands-free. But he will have the complete dashboard view through the underwriting workbench, which will present to him the complete risk that is underwriting, the third-party data that is enriched actually, the generative AI summarizing the risk and then providing the alerts, and then predictive AI kind of giving an indication of what could be the potential loss ratios, etc. Right? And all this he can do through the conversational AI. As he gives the instructions, it will indicate as to what it would be like overall actually, right? One key aspect though is that while all these technologies are going to help, the judgment will be of the underwriters, the decision making will be of underwriters. So that's my view.
No, it's fantastic. I've always said that as a technology is an enabling tool for the human to make more informed underwriting decisions. Categorically, it does not take people out of the loop. It just ultimately empowers them to make better decisions, smarter decisions on more data sets that are widely available to them, in-house and external. So thank you very much, panelists. That was fabulous, really, really good. And I think now to kind of start to bring that to life, Digitide have been very, very busy and invested many millions in helping the insurance industry with this problem statement, helping the industry with a digital submission intake solution. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Moshe and Javon, who are going to take you through what a proposition for you. Go for it, Moshe.
Okay, can we bring up the slide, please? Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Okay. We did a lot of talking, general, some specifics, and so on about submissions and AI with data elements, and et cetera, et cetera. But since the demo is really going to focus on the actual submission itself, what I tried to do on this slide is really summarize the advantage of going to automated submissions, and I really broke it down to two sides: the client automation process advantages and the carrier advantages for automation. I mean, I can read them, but I think there's some that are critical, okay, that I love to talk about just a little bit, okay? Because now we spoke about the required data, eliminate errors, et cetera, But again, I think one of the key is accelerating quotes to the broker/customer. Brokers have the opportunity to go to a lot of different carriers. And that's what they do best, okay? Those companies that can actually react, okay, the fastest, and where the broker feels that they are getting, the right attention, obviously by having automated submissions, that's always helpful in getting a new client. I mentioned earlier about the everybody wants new technology, et cetera, from the customer perspective. But I think one of the greatest is the 24/7 availability. I don't have to call at 9 o'clock in the morning to start getting quotes. If I have an automation system where I can get the submissions in. Now, again, we're focusing and just bringing in the submissions. We're not talking to going to any PAS systems. We let the insurance company decide where they want the data to go to. Okay, once the submission information is brought in-house. But again, the key is once you start off with automated submissions, then eventually you pass it on to your PAS system, and you can really do it practically 24/7. Again, that to me is always a tremendous advantage, especially different time zones, et cetera. You have insurance companies throughout the United States. If we talk about world insurance companies, if there's no clock, definitely a tremendous advantage. So then I see that from the client automation process advantages. Now let's talk about the carrier, okay, advantages. Obviously, the first one is low operational costs. The amount where I grew up, and I worked with some big insurance companies, the underwriting assistant staff was amazing. It was tremendous. It was just, automating your submissions, okay, and being able to say you need better data or different data, et cetera, and doing that through automation, the amount of people that you require are less. Obviously, you have to involve in actually buying a system and so on, but the advantages of that is quicker, it's more efficient, and things have to change. Automating that works much quicker. Can you imagine if you had the very standard form all the time and now new things are required? With automation, that just works so much better. So again, you definitely have a lower operational cost. Obviously, more accurate processing. If you get the right information in and your first AI or your first review of the actual submission, some basic decisions can be made right away without having to go to an underwriter and so on. Obviously, a tremendous advantage, again, for the carrier and so on. Eliminate manual tasks, that's a given, okay? And be able to quote more efficiently in the shorter time. We spoke about that. That's a definite, okay? The bigger one is, again, is able to handle more quotes during peak times. If by not having to review manual submissions, okay, one by one, and making decisions, to push it along and go give it to the underwriter or not, as the submissions come in through an automated process, by definition, you can make those, the system is making the decisions for you much quicker. And therefore, what it really does is those that really don't meet your requirements, you can actually deny, and then you can actually then go into the next step is triage the quicker, the ones that you're more interested in, the policies you really want to write, the business you really want. Because it's, again, the insurance company knows where their profit and losses are, what's their best thing that they want to write, and so on. So again, all this is definitely a tremendous advantage for the carrier. Okay. And of course, generate more premiums by increasing the accuracy of the data. That's a given. I love doing a lot of AI analysis on data coming in, both from the premium side as well as the loss side. And by looking at, as we get smarter and there's more AI, looking at your data that you already have in your system, you can definitely make much better decisions on what you should sell and shouldn't sell from a coverage perspective. So again, automating this process is definitely a tremendous advantage to the carrier. With that, if there are not any questions, Jeevan, it's all yours for the demo.
Yes, thanks, Mosh. So having heard the benefits by Mosh, we'll quickly jump into the demo. I will give a sneak preview of what we're going to show. Essentially, our automated submission intake solution is RPA-based and AI-driven data extraction, right? So in this demo, we will demonstrate as to how using this particular solution, the extraction from various types of submission documents can be automated, simplified actually, and be faster. And the solution supports various ACORD forms. We're talking about hundreds with various versions of it, the various types of loss runs, supplemental documents, schedules, etc., right, in various formats, whether it's PDFs with a text format or PDF image files or the Word documents or Excel sheets, etc., right? Okay. And the fact that it is an end-to-end automation, right, right from the email intake to all the way to making the data available through to the underwriting systems through the APIs, actually, right? Okay. And that this solution is scalable and can be made available 24/7, right? So the workflow or the process that we're going to talk about is the submission intake, where the broker sends the email to the insurance company. The email is received, processed automatically. The documents are extracted, and then by the processor bot, they're kept in the designated folder. The transcriber API is invoked, ACORD transcriber API, which is in the cloud, and the data is extracted by the transcriber API, and the response is sent in the JSON format. And one beauty of this transcriber API is that, for each of the extracted elements, there is a confidence score as to how confident it is about the extraction process. Generally, when it is structured documents and text PDF files, it goes 90-95%. If it is image files, it might be, or the handwritten text, it could be lesser, based on which we could make a decision as to whether we should process it automatically or it might need some kind of intervention. But if it is the standard documentations, it is complete straight through processing, right? And the extracted data is kind of made updated in the database, which is made available to the underwriting system through the APIs, right? This is a high-level architecture, right? So we have the intake bot here, processor bot here, and then the transcriber API is invoked. This is in a cloud, right? And the extracted data is kept in the database, right? And the key part is that this can integrate with any of the core underwriting systems, right? Whether it is your Guidewares of the world or the Duprix of the world or your in-house legacy system or recently developed based on a low-code, no-code underwriting application, actually, right? So whatever the target or the current system might be, it seamlessly can extract the data through this database, through the APIs, and then make it work, actually. Right? So we're not talking about boiling the ocean. This is kind of a solution that we can bring it and keep it on the top of your existing core system in a kind of a plug and play model so that the transition becomes seamless, right? So having said that, let me now pass it back to Padma for demoing the actual solution in action, right? Padma, can you?
Thanks, Jeevan. Thanks, Jeevan. I'm just bringing it.
We can see your screen, Padma. It's great. The ACORD form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Today I will walk you through an automated submission intake process using ACORD Forms bot and API-based integration. For this demonstration purpose, we have just picked up ACORD 125 and ACORD 126, which is for general liability coverage. So typically in a real-time scenario, the broker sends an email with these documents attached. So we're just going to take you through that process. So here is a draft, and I'm just going to send it to the inbox. So while we wait for the email to be received, this sorry. This email has got 3 attachments. One is ACORD 125, which is a general application, which includes the insurer and risk information. And then ACORD 126 is the general liability coverage and limits information. And then we have the loss. Loss for commercial, it's like it is pretty much needed. And typically the expected is like we need to have 5 years of loss information. Typically, these ACORD forms are all structured and we have a template in place. So it is typically easy to process using the ACORD transcriber API. The last one is from the carrier. So each carrier has got their own way of generating the loss reports. So it is sometimes it might not be in a structured format. But still, ACORD transcriber API is capable of extracting data from those documents as well. So now we have received the email, and the bot will actually actively monitor to see if there is a email received in this inbox. And once it reads it, it will start downloading the attachments into us defined folder. So if I can just bring this up, the bot is actually trying to read the mailbox to download the attachments.
So as we
So it
speak,
has
what
now
is
started
happening
down.
is,
Sorry, Jim.
yeah. So as we speak, what is happening is that, the bot behind the scenes is picking up each of the attachments, keeping it in the right folder indexed properly, and then invoking the API, ACORD transcriber API for the given submission. And it has a way to track the specific submissions and its attachments through a message ID, right? So, and once all the attachments are processed and the response is extracted, received in the JSON format, all this information is correlated and then updated in the underwriting database. Right? So it all happens in the automated way without any kind of intervention. Just imagine, right, if we look at the current state of things, all this, by the time the email itself would be picked up, it might be a few hours actually, right? And then going through the email, opening the documents. Imagine if there are schedule of vehicles, schedule of drivers going through tens of vehicles, tens of drivers. Actually, it might be so cumbersome process. It might take few hours or probably spill across days. What is happening here is within minutes, all this information is extracted. Right? So once the process is done, Padma, you can switch to the UI and demonstrate the new worklist item that is created for this submission real time, and then show the contents, right, of the extracted data.
Yeah, sure. So basically, once the attachments are downloaded into the designated folders, the ACORD transcriber API is invoked, and it starts extracting the data and classifies and actually sends the data back into a structured JSON format. This is the response that we receive from the transcriber API. So now that the attachments have been processed, so this is the ACORD 125 that we processed. This has information, typically the required information like the agency, carrier, line of business, attachments,
Okay.
policy information,
If you switch
application
your
information.
screen,
Sorry.
Chief, we don't, Pamela, we're not seeing that screen. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can see the PDF. Can you show the user interface, Padma?
Okay.
We're not able to see that.
Yeah, I'm just going
It's
to
free.
this.
I think there's a
Okay.
bit of a delay on Padma's download. You might want to turn your camera off, Padma. Might find you've got a bit of extra bandwidth. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a simple UI interface that we just created for this demonstration to just show how the data is extracted from the PDFs and parsed and updated in the database, which again can be sent to the any underwriting systems using the inbuilt APIs. So here we have the list of submissions that we have processed, and let's pick the one that we processed. So here we have 3 tabs, Form 125, Form 126, and the last one. So this Form 125 is typically the PDF that we process. So you can just see like whatever information that we have captured in this ACORD 125 form. The same is visible here. The data is extracted and it is using the APIs we have populated in this interface. So you have the agency, carrier information, applicant information, contact, premises information, the line of business, and the attachments associated to it. This is ACORD 125 extracted data. So if we move on, the next one is ACORD 126, wherein we'll have the coverages and the limit information. So this is the ACORD 126 that we process. So we have the coverages and limits information along with the schedule of hazards here. So if we switch back to the interface, you can just see the coverages, the deductibles, limits, and the schedule of hazards. This is actually the extracted data from the PDFs. And the next will be the loss that we processed. Typically, the loss had 3 loss details, and it was actually an image embedded in a PDF format. So ACORD Transcriber API was able to process it, so we can see the populated, data populated here. So this is kind of a simple demonstration, but again, this streamlined process reduces the manual effort, minimizes errors, and also reduces the turnaround time. And also this supports straight-through process, allowing the underwriters to focus on complex and real high-value cases. So this concludes the demonstration of an automated submission intake flow using ACORD form and API-based integration. So over to you, Jeevan. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Padma. Just take a couple of minutes to translate what this means to you, right? If you have noticed, in the last 10 minutes, we have actually processed a new business submission kind of end to end. Now, I'll kind of paint the picture of what this means to you as an insurance company, right? So let me share my screen and let me bring up the next slide, right? So if this was a qualified risk, actually, so that the insurance company writes, it's a standard, complex, simple, it meets all the criteria. What this means is that while you are attending this webinar, in the last 1 hour or in the last 10 minutes, all such new business submissions would have been intaken, ingested, extracted, processed, and the policy would have been issued. And not only that, the new business policy would have been emailed back to the broker, right? So STP. So this automated intake solution essentially is enabling all these aspects, the straight-through processing of your qualified risk on one hand. And by the way, if there was some information that was missing, let's say the brokers forgot to attach the loss run, right? Or maybe he missed some information, critical field in the ACORD 125 form, immediately, right? Email is triggered based on the rules back to the broker saying that, hey, this is missing information. rather than having to wait for 2 days and then send an email, making the broker frustrated, right? Or by the way, actually, in case this is something that you, as an insurance company, don't underwrite, either the risk actually or the location, right? Or that this is not within your appetite. No more waste of time, right? In the 10 minutes that are based on the rules engine, the decision is made and then email is triggered back to the broker, actually, right? So net, what is happening is only the complex risks where some human or expertise intervention is needed is kind of course, extracted in real time in 10 minutes and then automatically assigned to the respective underwriter for him to process actually. So underwriter is spared from uh, trivial risks, is paid from things that we don't underwrite, is paid from the missing information. He can completely focus on the risks that matter, where his expertise is of value. And he will be further enabled by three aspects actually, right? One is the data related to the risk actually, right? So enrich the data with third-party API integrations, automatically provide him a 360-degree view, enable him with a GenAI chatbot for giving summary of what the overall risk is, what the insights are, what the alerts are, etc., right? So this is one way of enablement actually on the risk itself, right? And the second way of enablement is that leveraging the AI for if I am the underwriter, actually, have I written similar risks in the past, actually, right? So what was my thought process, right? So pick up all those policies, submissions, risks that I have worked on, let's say in the last 5 years, actually, and get me a view that, hey, by the way, there are three such exactly similar ones. This is the decision you're taking. This is your notes. This is your thought process. So AI can enable that, actually, right? And not only my own experience, but also collective wisdom of the organization, actually, right? Similar risk in this organization, how other underwriters have assessed, actually, right? So look at the database, get the insights, actually, and give a picture, right? And then further enable with the predictive underwriting in terms of, hey, this is likely to be a better loss ratio. It's good to underwrite versus, hey, by the way, this seems to be more risky, or maybe this is not priced properly, right? This is a risk that is within the appetite. We can underwrite it actually, but the pricing can be slightly higher, right? So all these things enabled by the AI, right? So net, this automated submission intake solution is setting the stage for intelligent underwriting in the near term, right? So with that, I want to conclude and pause for any questions or pass it back to Mark. So.
Yeah, Javon, really good. So obviously within that kind of demonstration for the audience's benefit, the collaboration between ACORD Solutions Group and Digitide is leveraging our AI data extraction technology called Transcriber. The use case that the team demonstrated was around ACORD form extraction and loss run extraction. For those familiar or maybe not quite so familiar with those ACORD forms, which they were the originality of data standards 55 plus years ago of ACORD, printed letter-headed paper that's turned to PDFs and still somewhat printed off and scanned and faxed, and therefore very much still part of the ecosystem. But those ACORD forms, there's 4,700 different versions of those ACORD forms. So the submission solution that the Digitide team have been demonstrating supports all of those ACORD forms, as well as non-ACORD forms, such as the loss run models that the Digitide team are leveraging. There's a whole raft of other models across schedules of values and invoices and claims and email submissions and all kinds of other things, supplementals and whatnot, that the Digitide team can support their customers with as well. So hugely powerful bit of technology the team have built there to help drive, to Paul's comment, the most innovative industry when it comes to that kind of submission process and being able to kind of digitize that so quickly. So that was very fascinating insight, Paul. So thank you for that. We've got 5 minutes to run, so we're wonderfully on time. The chat and the Q&A tabs are both open to the audience to raise any questions up. I've got one question came in from a different channel actually, in fact, that I'll ask now, but gives you guys the audience a chance to kind of have a think of any other questions for them. But my question, and I'm going to pivot it to Joanne, if you wouldn't mind coming back on camera. Joanne, the question for you, again, your underwriting hat on for a second. Clearly, the insurance industry covers a whole raft of different classes of business, from homeowners and auto insurance right the way through to marine hull and aviation and Ronaldo's legs, right? And everything in between. How does automating submission intake differ, or the value case differ per class of business? Is there a particular class of business you think it has the most impact on versus others? What's your viewpoint in that regard?
I think historically, this is such a big question for 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Historically, casualty lines have always been more challenging to find data to help support supported underwriting. Like, this is where the human is really required to use experiential understanding and knowledge of context to help you evaluate risk. So I'm very bullish on what the power of AI insights and
Lost you.
Might have lost Joanne there. That's me. Moshe, you can hear me okay still?
Yeah, we lost Joanne.
I think
it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Fabulous. I tell you what, we're going to take that topic and we're going to carry that on as potentially a next theme for another horizon event. So we were a couple of minutes out. Any other questions from the audience before we'll look to close out? No? Okay. Well, again, huge thanks and appreciation to our panelists. Huge thanks and appreciation to the support of the Digitide team for ACORD, the ecosystem, and ACORD Solutions Group for embracing our investments in technology for the market. So very exciting proposition. I'm sure for those who want an introduction into the Digitide team, please do. We will make sure that the Javan and Moshe and Pawan's contact details are available to you, so you can reach out and leverage and follow up with the Digitide team. There you go. Perfect. Wonderful. Up on screen. Do jot that down. It will be in the pack that we circulate with you for you all. Again, huge thanks again, and wish you all a wonderful, now would be an afternoon. So thanks very much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.